a great year for film. Women in film, Kathryn Bigelow nominated tonight. I haven't really been following the controversy over Zero Dark 30, but when it comes to torture, I trust the lady who spent 3 years married to James Cameron.
So there are two jokes from Tina Fey and Amy Poehler's opening monologues at the Golden Globes I've never forgotten. There's the joke about gravity and George Clooney from 2014.
It's the story of how George Clooney would rather float away into space and die than spend one more minute with a woman his own age.
And then there's the joke about James Cameron from 2013. Look how everyone surrounding Kathryn Bigelow reacts. Look at Jessica Chastain. She is in total shock. 3 years after Kathryn Bigelow became the first woman ever to win Best Director at the Oscars for The Hurt Locker, she was nominated at the Golden Globes for Best Director for her stunning Hurt Locker follow-up Zero Dark 30. In the weeks following its release, many condemned the film's torture scenes as inaccurate and controversial, which set up Poehler's perfectly delivered joke that brought the house down. Yes, many have insinuated, suggested, and all out said that the Oscar-winning director James Cameron can be a jerk in real life, a notorious perfectionist on his movies, arrogant, narcissistic, a screamer with a hot temper, allegedly of course. Nathan Sharp at Screen Rant penned a fascinating article from earlier this year entitled 15 Wild Behind-the-Scenes Stories Involving James Cameron, which features a report that Cameron nearly fired people who worked for him for taking bathroom breaks, and he would staple cell phones to the wall with a nail gun if he heard them going off. There's even a rumor that on the set of 1989's The Abyss, Ed Harris punched Cameron in the face, and to date refuses to talk about his time on the movie. Again, this is all alleged behavior. I wasn't there to see any of it, obviously, although I did have the opportunity in 2007 to be a post-production PA on Avatar, and turned it down. But let's say, at best, James Cameron has been difficult throughout the years, and I feel like the loud reaction to that Golden Globes joke said it all. Many in the industry aware James Cameron was married to Kathryn Bigelow between 1989 and 1991, but if Jessica Chastain's face proves anything, it's that this piece of their history is seldom talked about in public. There's not much information about their marriage online. On Wikipedia, all it says on Bigelow's page about her marriage to Cameron is one sentence. A 2010 Daily News article says that they married soon after Bigelow wrapped production on the Jamie Lee Curtis thriller Blue Steel, and they collaborated on Bigelow's next project, Point Break, Bigelow directing and Cameron producing. According to the Daily Mail, Cameron fell in love with Linda Hamilton while working on 1991's Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and then Bigelow filed for divorce. It was a fairly brief marriage, the one and only for Bigelow, and one of 5 for Cameron, but throughout the following years they reportedly remained amicable, Cameron writing and producing 1995's Strange Days, which Bigelow directed, and Bigelow later asked for Cameron's input on the screenplay to The Hurt Locker, Cameron telling her to drop whatever she was working on and make it. Well, make it she did, and who would have thought many months later James Cameron would be sitting directly behind Kathryn Bigelow at the Kodak Theater, both of them nominated for Best Director at the 82nd Academy Awards. Now, I've made tons of Oscar race retrospectives in the last 2 years, including Sandra Bullock versus Meryl Streep at this very ceremony, but this is the first time ever on Brian Rowe Video that we're tackling a Best Director race, and I can't wait to dig in. Who else was competing with Bigelow and Cameron in the category? Was Bigelow a sure thing to become the first woman to win Best Director? Or did Cameron, whose Avatar was taking the worldwide box office by storm, have a chance at an upset? He did win one big televised prize after all. In this video, we're talking Best Director at the 2010 Oscars, how Kathryn Bigelow made history, and why she defeated James Cameron for the award. First, let's talk about the nominees. The 5 nominees for Best Director at the 82nd Academy Awards are all excellent. It's a stellar group of talented artists and amazing Best of the Year movies, but the one person in the category I would argue had zero chance in winning this one was Jason Reitman, nominated for the superbly entertaining Up in the Air, starring the Oscar-nominated George Clooney, Vera Farmiga, and Anna Kendrick, the film telling of a man whose job is traveling around the country firing people.
How much did they first pay you to give up on your dreams?
27 grand a year.
And when were you going to stop and come back and do what makes you happy?
Up in the Air was one of my favorite movies of 2009, a delightful comedy drama with wonderful writing and performances. And if his previous 2 films hadn't done so already, Up in the Air proved director Jason Reitman was a truly gifted storyteller. The son of Ivan Reitman, director of Stripes and Ghostbusters, Jason came on strong with his debut feature Thank You for Smoking, and then he received an Oscar nomination for Best Director for his second film, the runaway comedy hit Juno. Getting a director nomination for only your second movie is pretty difficult, one that's a comedy no less, but Reitman managed to do it, and then 2 years later, Up in the Air brought Reitman 3 Oscar nominations for directing, writing, and producing. This is the film that brought Reitman his most award nominations and wins, sharing Best Adapted Screenplay victories with co-writer Sheldon Turner at the Golden Globe Awards, Critics' Choice Awards, WGA Awards, and BAFTA Awards. So obviously he got very close to an Oscar win there, but it was Jeffrey Fletcher who ended up snagging the gold trophy in that category for Precious. Jason Reitman could have won an Academy Award that night in Adapted Screenplay, but he had 0 shot in Director, the category too competitive, his film Up in the Air not going home with any wins that night. Reitman hasn't received a single Oscar nomination since 2010, his films Labor Day and Men, Women, and Children and The Frontrunner not exactly warmly embraced by the Academy. His best movies since Up in the Air have been his 2 Charlize Theron Diablo Cody collaborations, Young Adult from 2011 and Tully from 2018. Next up is Quentin Tarantino, who received a Best Director nod at the 82nd Academy Awards for his marvelous World War II masterpiece, Inglourious Basterds, starring Brad Pitt, about a group of Jewish U.S. soldiers' assassination plan for Nazi leaders coinciding with a theater owner's vengeful plans.
Each and every man under my command owes me 100 Nazi scalps. And I want my scalps.
Tarantino had been talking about making Inglourious Basterds for many years as he continued shaping the screenplay, and in 2008 the project finally came together after Tarantino found the perfect Hans Landa in Christoph Waltz, who later went on to win pretty much every supporting actor prize known to man for his spectacular villainous performance.
And Quentin, with his unorthodox methods of navigation, this fearless explorer, took this ship across and brought it in with flying colors. And that's why I'm here.
It had been a long time since Tarantino had received an Oscar nomination, 15 years, for both writing and directing Pulp Fiction, winning a trophy with Roger Avary for the screenplay. Jackie Brown should have gotten him a writing nod, but didn't, shockingly. The incredible Kill Bill is my favorite Tarantino project, but it didn't fare well at the Oscars either due to the film being split into 2 parts, which I have always believed is the main reason Uma Thurman wasn't nominated for Best Actress for her astonishing performance. But once Inglourious Basterds came along and the strong box office and reviews rolled in, it looked like award season would be kind to Tarantino's latest and greatest. The film received 4 Golden Globe nominations, 6 BAFTA nominations, a whopping 10 Critics' Choice nominations, and then it got a very respectable 8 nods on Oscar nominations morning, including Best Original Screenplay and Best Director for Tarantino, which was fantastic, but as we came to the end of the season, Inglourious Basterds had one big problem. It wasn't winning anything outside of Best Supporting Actor. If Tarantino could have picked up at least one big prize along the way, especially at a televised ceremony, maybe he could have been competitive for the original screenplay Oscar, but The Hurt Locker kept picking up steam those last few weeks, and Mark Boal won that gold trophy instead. Again, like Jason Reitman, Quentin Tarantino never had much of a shot in the director category for Inglourious Basterds because of the stiff competition, and his film just not winning much outside of that Christoph Waltz sweep. I'm happy he's been recognized in the Best Director category 3 times by now, most recently for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and he did win a second screenplay Oscar for Django Unchained in 2013. With Tarantino starting production later this year on what is reportedly his final film, The Movie Critic, here's hoping an Oscar win for Best Director is still in the cards for him. Someone I would argue had a slightly better chance at winning the Oscar for Best Director in early 2010 was Lee Daniels, nominated for his acclaimed drama Precious, about an abused teenager played by Gabourey Sidibe.
Precious, you got something you want to say?
No.
Then don't be slamming shit down in here, you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
As I talked about in my Sandra Bullock video, Precious did very well that award season, Monique sweeping the Best Supporting Actress category, Sidibe winning Best Actress at the NAACP Image Awards and the Film Independent Spirit Awards, and at the Oscars, Monique took home her expected trophy, as well as Jeffrey Fletcher for Best Adapted Screenplay. That screenplay win tells me Lee Daniels was slightly ahead of Jason Reitman and Quentin Tarantino in the Best Director category, his film a sensation since it premiered at the 2009 Sundance Film Festival, Daniels winning at Film Independent for both Best Director and Best Feature. A black person had also never won Best Director at the Academy Awards, which still holds true today, sadly enough, so there was a chance to make history, as Barbra Streisand said in her intro, highlighting potential firsts for both Daniels and Kathryn Bigelow.
The winner could be, for the first time, a woman. Or it could be, also for the first time, an African American.
I feel like in a different year with less competition, Daniels might have won this prize, but with Bigelow and James Cameron in the mix, he just didn't stand a chance. I think what might have hurt him the most was him not having that overdue factor, Shadowboxer from 2005, his only previous movie. He later went on to make films like The Paperboy and The Butler, both receiving nominations at precursor ceremonies, mostly for acting, but he has yet to return to the Oscars. Alright, now James Cameron. Oh boy, James Cameron. The man's whole career was on the line for the $200 million Titanic in 1997, and the film was a box office smash, critical darling, and eventual Oscar juggernaut.
I'm the king of the world!
The guy didn't make a fictional feature film for 12 years, and then he came roaring back with Avatar, a movie that managed to actually best Titanic at the worldwide box office and bring Cameron even more Oscar attention. The film, about a Marine who's dispatched to the moon Pandora who tries to protect the world he comes to love, worked its 3D magic over audiences everywhere.
Ah! Damn!
Don't thank. You don't thank for this.
It's amazing how competitive James Cameron came to be at the Oscars, considering for more than a decade his films did spectacular box office, but barely made a dent during award season. His 1986 Aliens did get that amazing Oscar nomination for Sigourney Weaver in Best Actress, but films like The Abyss, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and True Lies only showed up in technical categories. By the time we got to Titanic, nobody could have expected the sheer phenomenon that movie would prove to be, especially when it came to Oscar night, the film tying the record, which still stands to this day, of 11 Academy Award wins. Despite Avatar's massive box office, I don't think anyone expected Cameron's follow-up to perform like Titanic did at the Oscars. The science fiction genre is never that awards friendly, and the crazy amount of action in the film's third act didn't look like something the Academy would exactly fawn over, but as it turned out, Avatar received 9 nods on Oscar nominations morning, including picture, director, cinematography, and film editing. It hit pretty much everywhere he needed to, and never forget, James Cameron won Best Director at the Golden Globes that January, and Avatar won Best Motion Picture Drama.
I'm gonna try to make this as brief as I can because frankly I have to pee something fierce.
So Cameron did have a shot at repeating Best Picture and Best Director 12 years after Titanic. Was there anyone who could stop him? Of course, the only person who could was Kathryn Bigelow, who received her first Best Director Oscar nomination for The Hurt Locker, about a sergeant during the Iraq War assigned to an Army bomb squad who was put at odds with his squad mates.
What's the best way to go about disarming one of these things?
The way you don't die, sir.
Filmed in the country of Jordan, it couldn't have been more different than Avatar, The Hurt Locker set in the real world about a controversial war, the movie having its first screenings way back at the Venice Film Festival and Toronto Film Festival in 2008, and then crept its way into theaters in the summer of 2009 to just $12 million domestic. That box office take didn't exactly scream Oscar, but the film hung on for many months as a critical darling. Audiences continued to discover it on DVD throughout the fall and winter, and critics groups and early award ceremonies immediately pushed The Hurt Locker to the forefront. And Kathryn Bigelow, who had never been an Oscar contender for her previous films going back to the 1980s, suddenly had the gold trophy within her grasp. She had of course made great movies before The Hurt Locker. Near Dark, Point Break, and Strange Days are all excellent, but it's bizarre when you go to her IMDb awards page and see that she was nominated for virtually nothing before The Hurt Locker. Thankfully, everyone started taking her work on this compelling war drama seriously, and after picking up some big awards, both televised and not televised, in the early months of 2010, she became the person to beat at the Oscars in Best Director. Barbra Streisand was in many ways the perfect person to present the category at the 82nd Academy Awards. After winning the Best Director Golden Globe in 1984 for Yentl, the Academy snubbed her in the same category a few weeks later, and then despite The Prince of Tides getting into Best Picture at the 1992 Oscars, Streisand was snubbed again in Director, inspiring this joke from Billy Crystal.
7 nominations on the shelf. Did this film direct itself?
I'm sure Streisand would have loved to have been known as the first woman in history to win an Academy Award for Best Director, but at least she got to present the first woman with her gold trophy, because after saying the 5 nominees in the category, Streisand said,
"Well, the time has come. Kathryn Bigelow!"
What a monumental moment. Certainly a long time coming after 82 frickin' years. Only 3 women had ever been nominated in the category before Bigelow: Lena Wertmüller for Seven Beauties in 1976, Jane Campion for The Piano in 1994, and Sofia Coppola for Lost in Translation in 2004. I mean, just think of that. Bigelow was only the 4th woman ever nominated for Best Director in 82 years of the Academy Awards. It's crazy. It's wrong. But at least we finally got that beautiful history-making moment for the great Kathryn Bigelow. Why did she win? Especially over the other gifted directors in her category. Here are the top 5 reasons. The first reason Kathryn Bigelow won the Oscar for Best Director was that she made a damn good movie, one of the very best of 2009. I remember watching it in a mostly empty theater in Los Angeles, and I was totally mesmerized all the way through, and I told everyone who would listen to go see it. The Jeremy Renner performance is especially powerful, those haunting final few minutes of the narrative sticking with me big time in the last 14 years. Bigelow managed an impressive ensemble of actors too, including Anthony Mackie, Brian Garrity, Guy Pearce, David Morse, and Ray Fiennes, and they all elevate the material into something special. Critics were blown away by the quality of the film, and they kept it alive in those many months leading into award season. The second and probably most obvious reason Bigelow won is that she nearly swept at the precursor ceremonies of Best Director, taking almost every major trophy in January and February leading up to the Academy Awards. She won at Critics' Choice, BAFTA, and DGA, and took lots of critics' prizes too. The only big televised prize she didn't get was the Golden Globe Award, which went to James Cameron, a win even he was surprised by.
Frankly, I thought Kathryn was going to get this, so I'm kind of winging it here. And she richly deserves it, but make no mistake, I'm very grateful.
If Cameron had been victorious at one more ceremony, like BAFTA or DGA, then I think he might have been more in the running for the Oscar, but Bigelow winning almost everywhere made her the clear frontrunner going into the Academy Awards. The third reason is that The Hurt Locker kept building in steam throughout award season, winning lots of prizes outside of Best Director like Best Picture, Best Screenplay, and others. The movie came up short at the Globes, not winning any of the 3 categories it was nominated for, but then it got into acting categories at SAG, BAFTA, and the Oscars. At BAFTA, The Hurt Locker did extremely well, earning 8 nominations and winning 6 awards. Renner got that well-deserved Best Actor nomination at the Oscars, and like at BAFTA, The Hurt Locker ultimately won 6 prizes there too, not just Picture and Director, but also Best Original Screenplay, Best Film Editing, Best Sound Editing, and Best Sound Mixing. Avatar took home 3 Oscars, including Best Cinematography, but the film just couldn't compete in the top categories with The Hurt Locker. The fourth reason was the film's subject matter, the Iraq War showing up in so many disappointing Hollywood films for a few years that I think the Academy was ready to reward a good one. So many movies about contemporary war zones underwhelmed around that time, like Home of the Brave in 2006, Lions for Lambs and Rendition in 2007, and Body of Lies and Stop Loss in 2008. The Hurt Locker was a breakthrough film about the subject matter that everybody could get behind, one filled with action and tension, great performances, and emotional resonance. And the fifth and final reason is narrative, narrative, narrative. Talk about a success story that everybody in the Academy could get behind, finally awarding the first woman Best Director, looking past box office, and judging the quality of the film itself, and having her beat her former husband James Cameron for the Gold Trophy when he had earned 3 Oscars 12 years prior for Titanic. Bigelow's triumph was the kind of Cinderella story nobody could possibly deny, and thus it was her name Streisand called on March 7, 2010. Bigelow's speech was a great one.
And I'd just like to dedicate this to the women and men in the military who risk their lives on a daily basis in Iraq and Afghanistan and around the world, and may they come home safe. Thank you.
Making Bigelow's Best Director victory even more substantial, I would say, was her movie winning Best Picture as well, which showed that her taking the Oscar was indeed about more than just narrative, and that Academy members also loved the movie. It's a fantastic Best Picture win, maybe not one of the most memorable of the last 20 years, but The Hurt Locker is a compelling and harrowing motion picture worthy of that prize. Did James Cameron have any hard feelings about losing the Oscar to Bigelow? In 2021, this is what he said. "She probably enjoyed the evening about 10% more than I did. For me to begrudge not only someone that I've loved and believed in winning Best Director, but also the first woman? Stand back, let her have her night. If I was sitting here now looking at an Oscar that could have been hers, I would be feeling like shit. I was very happy at how it worked out." So Cameron was ultimately happy about it. I think everybody was happy Bigelow won the Best Director Academy Award for The Hurt Locker, and yet it's unfortunate that she didn't become the first woman to get into the Best Director category twice, because she absolutely deserved it 3 years later for Zero Dark 30, one of my favorite films of 2012. Jessica Chastain should have won the Best Actress Oscar that year over Jennifer Lawrence. Oh, trust me, that's a race we'll get to. And Bigelow should have made it into Best Director. That controversy about the film I discussed at the beginning ultimately robbed her of that nod, and since 2012, Bigelow has only made one more movie, Detroit from 2017. I certainly hope she has more movies to make in the future. Whatever happens, Kathryn Bigelow is a stunning filmmaker, someone who took chances throughout the decades in a variety of genres, and I am so totally thrilled this historic victory happened for her. I mean, The Hurt Locker is quite simply a gem, and Kathryn Bigelow is, and will always be, a master storyteller. Thanks so much for watching! If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out my video about the Best Actress race at the same ceremony, Sandra Bullock versus Meryl Streep, and let me know in the comments below who you wanted to win Best Director. Was Kathryn Bigelow the right choice, or would you have gone with someone else? We'll see you next time.